There are moments in life that divide everything into two chapters: the life you thought you were going to have, and the one that begins after everything falls apart. For one merchant sailing across the Mediterranean, that moment arrived without warning. A violent storm swallowed his ship, taking with it his cargo, his livelihood, and the fortune he had spent years building. When the sea finally settled, he reached the shore with nothing. No business, no possessions, and no clear idea of what came next. His name was Zeno, and by every measure that had defined his life until that day, he had lost everything. Most people would have called it the greatest disaster of his life. History remembers it very differently. With nowhere else to go, Zeno wandered through the streets of Athens, trying to make sense of a future that no longer resembled the one he had planned. One day he stopped outside a bookseller's shop where someone was reading aloud the story of Socrates. Here was a man who had lived without wealth, without luxury, and without chasing status, yet was remembered as one of the wisest men who had ever lived. Zeno stood listening, and as the words sank in, one question quietly took hold of him. If a man could lose everything and still live well, what was real wealth? He asked the bookseller where he might find someone who lived like that. Without saying a word, the bookseller pointed across the street. Walking past was Crates of Thebes, a philosopher who had inherited great wealth and willingly given it all away. Zeno followed him, not because he was searching for another career, but because he was searching for another way to understand life. He spent the next 20 years studying under Crates and several other teachers, questioning everything he had once believed about success, happiness, and what truly belongs to us. When Zeno eventually began teaching, he didn't build an exclusive school or reserve his ideas for the wealthy. He stood beneath a public colonnade in Athens known as the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, where anyone could stop, listen, and learn. Merchants, laborers, politicians, and ordinary citizens all stood beneath the same roof, hearing the same ideas. Over time, the philosophy that grew from that simple porch became known as Stoicism, taking its name from the place where it was shared freely with anyone willing to listen. Years later, people would remember Zeno as the founder of Stoicism. They would remember his shipwreck, his years of study, and the porch where he welcomed anyone willing to learn. But perhaps the greatest lesson he left behind wasn't about surviving a storm. It was about what comes afterwards. As he once said, "Man conquers the world by conquering himself." Looking back, it is hard not to see that the greatest voyage of his life was never across the Mediterranean. It was the journey from losing everything outside himself to discovering what could never be taken away within. At first, those words seem impossible to understand. How can losing everything become a prosperous journey? But Zeno had discovered something that few people ever realize. The storm had not taken the most valuable part of his life. It had only taken the things he had once mistaken for his worth. The shipwreck had ended the life he expected to live, but it opened the door to the life he was meant to build. Without that storm, there may never have been a philosopher called Zeno. And without Zeno, there may never have been the philosophy that continues to help millions of people face hardship with courage and perspective. His story reminds us that life's greatest turning points rarely announce themselves as opportunities. They often arrive disguised as loss, disappointment, or failure. Sometimes the event we spend years wishing had never happened becomes the very event that quietly leads us towards the person we were capable of becoming all along. They told us, we forgot to listen.